Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. Hey there, it's Shannon. I wanted to jump in real quick and say, before you judge this episode, I wanted you to give this a chance. If you are either someone who does not experience a menstrual cycle, or if you saw the title of this episode and you said, I don't know if I want to listen to this, probably some woo-woo stuff. And I'm telling you, it's not. This episode is jam-packed with scientific facts and an input from an expert that I think is so valuable for anyone who either has a menstrual cycle or knows someone, which I hope is everybody, knows somebody on their team or in their family that go through this every single month. I think this will give you so much information to enlighten your mind into what goes on and what is actually fueling each stage of the menstrual cycle and what you can do in your business to work around that as best you can. So I'm really excited to welcome onto the episode today, Melissa Rodriguez. Melissa is not your average marketing expert. She is a digital nomad, entrepreneur, an all-around inspiring force of nature. With her coaching business, she helps female entrepreneurs tap into their unique feminine energy and their menstrual cycles to unleash their full potential. That's not all, though, because she has a marketing firm that provides top-notch digital marketing services like funnel creation, content creation, social media management, and email marketing. And she loves that these two things can intersect because you can leverage where you are in your cycle based on how you create content, based on how you make decisions in your business, based on how you build your systems. We're going to unpack all of that and more in this episode, and make sure you listen to the end because there are some special gifts available for you. Not only some high value items from Melissa, but I'm also going to be giving away a copy of her journal if you listen in the episode and find out how you can enter to win. All right. Let's hear from Melissa and learn more about this amazing cycle syncing journey. Hey, Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shannon, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And could you just tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Of course. So my name is Melissa Rodriguez, and I am the owner of a marketing firm as well as a cycle syncing business coach.
Okay. Can you explain what that is? A cycle syncing business coach, because not a lot of people have heard of that. So let's just break down the basics for them.
Yeah, of course. So the basic notion is this, right? You have a circadian rhythm, right? You have a 24-hour clock, right? Most people know this. Yep. Most people use this to their advantage, right? They know, for example, if they're not a morning person, they're not going to schedule important meetings for themselves at 7 a.m., right? That's just basic logic. What a lot of women don't know is that they also have an infradian rhythm, which is just as important, which is essentially your menstrual cycle. So your 28-day-ish cycle affects so many things about you, just in the same way that your circadian rhythm does. So understanding this can actually allow you to leverage this information in your life, in your business, in so many ways, so that things feel just more effortless and you get better results.
Okay, so is this kind of like a biohacking thing, or is
this, well, I mean, for me, sure. It is the ultimate female biohack. It absolutely is, right? And it is so much more than that because it goes much deeper than that in terms of, you can even take it towards the archetypes, right? And the different feminine archetypes that we embody in different phases of the cycle. You can take it in so many directions. You can learn about it in so many directions. But essentially for me, like, I love biohacking. Before I knew about cycle syncing, I would do things like intermittent fasting, which would work for me intermittently, funnily enough, actually, because one of the factor that I wasn't taking into consideration there was my menstrual cycle. A lot of the research that's done on a lot of the mainstream biohacks is done on men, right? A lot of it, not everything, but a lot of it is done on men. And a lot of the times, like, when we'll take the results and we'll see a post on Instagram that says, hey, so I saw there was a study that intermittent fasting help people lose 8 pounds, right, or whatever, and then they don't actually read the small
Hmm.
print of this was a study done on men. And that's not to say that other biohacks aren't useful for women, but they're not taking into consideration the unique hormones that we have that are just different from men's.
Yeah. And I think that no one would deny that there's a biological impact of the menstrual
Mm-hmm.
cycle, like that there
Yeah.
is something going on in your body that changes. I don't think anyone would argue that. But
Mm-hmm.
what's interesting is, and I know what listeners are wondering as soon as they tapped into this episode, was what the hell does this have to do with business? And I want to know from your perspective, because you are a cycle syncing business coach, can you
Mm-hmm.
talk about the intersection of these two things and how it can be leveraged in business?
Of course, right? So, what I want you to understand is that your menstrual cycle also affects your brain chemistry, right? It can alter your brain chemistry up to 25% throughout the cycle, the different phases in you're in, right? So, your brain chemistry affects your cognitive function, affects the mood you're in, your energy, your ability to focus, the different things that you're good at. And what I see a lot of female entrepreneurs doing is following different kind of bro hacks that has I don't know, maybe a 30-day plan or 90-day plan that has something around the 24-hour clock, right? For example, the 90-day year, right? The principle behind the 90-day year is to break something down into its daily actions and taking those same actions every day for 90 days, right? For example, and that's one of many different time or productivity business hacks that you'll see out there that revolve around this daily consistency. And I don't know about you, but and I've seen this for a lot of my clients. But I used to have this feeling of being a massive failure because I just couldn't stick to them. Right? I would find one of these plans. I would find different actions that I wanted to take, and I thought there was something just fundamentally wrong with me because I couldn't stick to these plans. Right? And it wasn't until I discovered the power of the menstrual cycle that I realized, okay, I'm just trying to be consistent in the wrong way, right? I'm trying to be consistent in a way that works for people with different hormones and with different brain chemistry. What if I tried to be consistent that actually flows with my own biology, with my own cycle? What would the results be there, right? And what's interesting is that when you start to do that, when you start to understand yourself in the different phases, the different things that you're good at, you start to do things in a way that just feels easier, feels more effortless because you're going with what's naturally best for you. And you actually become more productive, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're doing a lot less. Okay. So that is the magic. That's where it comes into your business. The other thing that I absolutely love about cycle syncing and business, and this is something that I wasn't expecting, is that when you start cycle syncing, incorporating this wisdom into your business, it massively, massively forces you to level up. Okay. Because if you've actually decided that you are going to take a few days off every month, or that there are certain days that you're not available for certain things, you still have a business to run, right? You still have clients to attend to. So what are you going to do? What systems are you going to set up in your business so that your clients still get the services or the products that they're paying for in a way that doesn't fully depend on your time, right? That doesn't depend on you being there. It forces you to level up in everything you're doing in your business. Actually, when I first started doing this, what I wasn't expecting was that that level up not only made me feel better, but actually tripled my profits, right?
Wow.
Yeah, in a space of about 6 months. Just because
Wow.
of
That's
the
amazing.
Yeah, because of the different actions that I was taking, the different ways that I had to set up my team so that I could take care of myself in a way that supported my cycle and supported the way that I really desired to operate and run my business.
That makes total sense. And for those wondering, you know what's really interesting, just to like back up for a second, is that most of us don't even know the phases of our cycle.
Yeah,
Like we don't really understand what is actually happening. And like as women, I mean, I understand maybe men don't understand it as much, but
sure.
even as women who have experienced this, and for me, experiencing it for north of 20 years,
Hmm.
I'm going, wait a minute, I don't actually know the phases of my cycle very well. Like I don't actually understand the science like I do. I think I understand sleep better than this. So
Sure.
I would love
That's
to know
understanding.
if you can break down for us are there like certain phases of the cycle that align
Hmm.
with certain types of activities? Can you kind of connect those dots for us?
Yes, of course. So, first of all, I just want to say that it's totally normal. We're not taught this. It's
I know.
crazy that we're
Yeah.
not taught this, right? This should be, and actually, I have a client who her daughter just got her first period, and just as a side note, it made me so excited for her to share this with us and to share that she was already teaching her 12, 13-year-old daughter about this, right? So this new generation, the new generation that we get to teach this to, right? They're going to learn this from the very beginning, right? And it's incredible because this is information that should be just taught to us. We should be, I think, if we were taught this, girls would be more excited about getting their period. Girls would be more excited about these superpowers coming their way. I don't know about you, but I had a terrible first period experience. I did not feel good about going into womanhood, right? And I think that's common. That happens to a lot of us. And in part, it is because we aren't taught about the gifts that do come with it, right? Society frames your period as something taboo, something that's to be hidden, slyly passing a tampon to someone at school, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that we've seen in adverts. That's the kind of thing that we see in culture and movies, that it's just an inconvenience.
Mhm.
It's something that makes us quote unquote weak, right? It's a
Right.
disadvantage that we have as women. It's a curse, right? This is a narrative around our menstrual cycles. And I want to show you through the phases that this really isn't the case, right? What makes it a curse as an inconvenience is the way that we approach it, is the way that our culture handles it. So the menstrual cycle is based around two events, right? So we talk about phases. There are 4 phases, but if you think about it, there are just 2 events and the transitions in between those 2 events. Okay. So you have your menstruation, which is your period. Then you have your follicular phase, which is the phase that takes you from your period to ovulation. And then from ovulation back to your menstruation, the in between phase is called the luteal phase. So you have the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, and the luteal phase. Those are the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. And I want to give you a very simple analogy because I think it's massively, massively helpful. They go with the seasons of the earth, right? So if you think about it, your menstrual phase is like your inner winter. It's time for hibernation or for rest. And then you go into your follicular phase, which is your spring. There's a new cycle, there's that new energy coming along. Then there's your ovulatory phase, which is your summer. There's the fun, there's the outgoingness, there's the expansion. And then you have your fall, which is a bit of a wind down, right? Cooling down, maybe a little bit more introverted, more detail oriented activities, which is your luteal phase. And then you go back to your winter. And those are the 4 seasons that we go through every single cycle.
Okay. And are there certain activities or, you know, certain things in business that you encourage clients to target to do or not do during those phases based on that you can, because I understand everyone's a little bit different, right? There's so
Yeah.
many dimensions to us as human beings that we can't make assumptions, but do certain phases of the cycle align well with certain activities or vice versa?
Yeah, of course. So if you think about it, well, first of all, you want this to be a journey of self-awareness, because what I'm good at in my follicular phase might not be necessarily identical to what you're good at and what you desire in your follicular phase. So first of all, like the first couple of months of any cycle syncing journey is always going to be a deep journey of awareness and experimentation, right? And this is, I mean, it's the journey throughout, right? You don't ever stop doing that. You don't ever stop doing the awareness and the implementation, but they are necessary steps before you get to leveraging that. However, there are
Right.
some things that we are just naturally good at, right? So if you're planning a launch, right? If you're launching a product, if there's a moment where you're going to be much more active in social media, for example, you don't there's some things that just make intuitive sense. You don't want to do that in the week before your period. You don't want to do that in your luteal phase, right? So you want to think of it as like a new launch, new cycle. So for example, if you know you're going to be doing certain activities that are very outgoing, that you're going to be speaking to a lot of people, you want to tune those into your follicular phase or to your ovulatory phase. I'll give you an example. This interview, right? I could have booked it for last week, but it would not have been a good time for me, right? I would have been in my luteal / menstrual phase, and that's not the energy that I wanted to be in. So I booked it for this week, even though I had time last week, right? This is something that I have on my Google Calendar so that I know when I'm booking things for. and that I'm going to be at my best for them. I take this into consideration. So anything that is starting something new, brainstorming things, planning a launch, anything like that, you want to do that around your follicular and your ovulatory phases. If you have photo shoots, if you're recording video for a course, if you are, anything that's, especially things that are going to be recorded for later on, because it is going to be leveraged throughout, people aren't going to watch it in different phases. They're going to watch it all the time, but you want to record it in, for example, your ovulatory phase, which is when you're naturally most magnetic. Your voice actually sounds more attractive during this phase, right? You look more attractive, right? And these are studies that were done, showing pictures to people, and women who were in their ovulatory phases, they just looked more attractive. They were rated as more attractive. Voices were rated as more attractive. So anything that you want to do, because you don't just want to be attractive. Like obviously, if you have a first date that you want to schedule around, then amazing. But not just for that, you can also use this to your advantage in business, in video. You're more articulate during this phase. So you want to schedule these types of things for these phases, right? And you might be thinking, okay, well, what's left for the rest of the phases, right?
That's what I was thinking. I'm going, okay, so record all of my podcasts in 1 week of the month, have all of my client meetings in 1 week of the month. Like that's not going to be realistic, right? Like we're not realistically going to be concentrating 100% of our activities that are ideal for that phase in that phase. So there's a couple of questions that are stemming out of that, which is like how to make the most of not being able to always do that, and what's left over, like you said, like now, like what do I do during my menstrual cycle?
Right? Okay. So I'll answer the second question first, because there are superpowers in the other phases, and then we'll go back to, hey, what's actually realistic, because I totally get it. Right. So first of all, your luteal phase, you might have noticed this, you have a superpower for being hypercritical, right? This is just something that we have. We have heightened attention to detail. And this can be so, so dangerous, right? Whenever I have a client who comes to me in a moment of, hey, everything's wrong, I can bet that 90% of the time they're coming to me during their luteal phases, right? And the thing, right? The thing it's so, so interesting. I find it absolutely fascinating. And the thing is, right, we have this hyper attention to detail during this phase. And the thing about hyperattention to detail is that if you don't direct it, it's not that it's not going to be used. It's not that, your brain isn't going to find that hypertension to detail. It's just going to nitpick everything, right? It's just going to nitpick everything that's wrong with your business, your relationship, your life, the places you're in. We find things messier during this phase. Like mess will bother us more during this phase than in other phases, right?
I can relate to that actually. I'm in that right now.
Okay.
And I'm like, I am going insane at the clutter in my house, and it's making me restless.
Yep.
I'm accidentally correcting people out of just intuition. It's almost like I have a different pair of glasses on. If I were to use an analogy, it's like you have a different pair of glasses on that magnify certain things. And it's like my behavior isn't changing. I'm not aware that that's happening. But as you're saying this, I'm laughing, going, oh my God. Yep. She's right.
So that's the thing. It's so predictable and we don't pay attention to it. But these glasses are absolutely fantastic in your business. I challenge you to take these glasses and look at your client onboarding process. Take these glasses and look at the systems for anything in your business. Like, this is a moment to look at systems, and you get to trust that this is when you're going to make the best decisions for those systems, for your client onboarding process. This is where you're going to see, but what happens if they don't actually fulfill this assumption that I have? You're less likely to notice that in your follicular phase, because in your follicular phase, you're creative and everything is rosy, and you just have a different pair of glasses on, which is massively useful, massively constructive. So in your luteal phase, you just want to make sure you have a lot of that follow through energy, right? So both the follicular and the luteal phases have a lot of creative energy, but there's a difference between the spark that creates something and then the follow through that gets it done. Okay. So in your follicular, you're in that spark, you're in the ideas. In the luteal, you're in the follow through, right? Don't bother with new ideas right now, right? Just any new ideas, leave them for 2 weeks from now. But follow through on what you
Okay.
decided 2 weeks ago. Follow through on everything that's pending on your list. Follow through and looking at your systems that you haven't looked at in 3 months. That's been a thing on your list for forever, right? Because you haven't found the time for it. This is the time for it. And it's massively constructive for your business to do this. This is where you get to save that percentage that ends up being thousands of dollars, right? This is where you go through your subscriptions and see what are you actually using. This is where you get to be the boundary queen, right? Because that's just where our hormones are at. So this is massively useful. We are more introverted during this time. I know this is something that's not as valued in our society because the stereotype of the woman that's valued and appreciated in our society is a woman who's outgoing and pleasing and accommodating. And this is not the woman in the luteal phase generally. The woman in the luteal phase, she has boundaries. There's just no, I don't know if I can swear in this podcast.
Oh, you can go for it. Say
Right?
She doesn't take shit from
She
anybody.
does
Yeah.
not take shit. There's just no bullshit in this phase. Nothing at all.
Yeah. It's like,
right?
I was going to say probably like less quote unquote attractive, but I'm like, well, that's my friend. Like that's the person I actually am like, well, I need her to come out more often and say no to things. Stop promising things I need ovulatory to stop promising things for luteal.
Yes. And this is part of the awareness, right? You get to have that, you get to rein in your ovulatory as well. Like when you're in follicular and ovulatory, you get to second guess yourself of like, do I actually want to do this? Or are my hormones telling me that I can do absolutely everything?
And that's actually a good argument. This goes against, so my nature is to be like uber responsive on top of everything, like within a day, right?
Right.
And it's making me go, maybe certain decisions, wait a week.
Yeah.
And what, how we say we have to sleep on it or we have to process it or anything like that. It actually may be wise to intentionally wait until the following week to respond, to make sure that the decision you're making is in alignment with both phases that you're going through, right? Where you could be transitioning through and say, you know what? You promised it in the ovulatory. And now it's like, actually, I need to ask more questions. Like it may not be that literal or that obvious, but it's a very interesting concept there of, understanding where you're at and understanding what you are inclined to do or not do. It's almost like what mood you're in to figure out, okay, I'm leaning towards this approach. I have to be hyper aware of that. I think awareness is the main point here of knowing where you're at with that and what you might be leaning into or leaning away from based on that, and kind of regulating yourself to go, is it because I'm more apt to say yes to this right now, or do I really mean it?
Yeah, 100%. I have a client who, before committing to a big goal that she had a big goal. And she said, hold on a second, I'm going to see if I still want to do this in a whole cycle, right? She took it to another level. She had time to think about it. So she literally asked herself this question in every
ask
phase.
4 times.
Yeah, 4 times. 4 times, and 4 times, I think she ended up saying yes for different reasons 4 times. So every single one of these phases, had her saying yes from a different place. And that's how she knew that it was a full all in yes for her.
Right. And I know, right? So someone listening might go, okay, again, must be nice to have 4 weeks to make a decision or to what would be perceived as a luxury, right? To extend this or to flex everything around the cycle. Sure. We're not, as a society, as you mentioned earlier, we're still tabooing this thing. Half of the population goes through this every single month, every single day of our lives. We're in some type of phase, right? No one's talking about it. Very taboo. The secret tampon pass, as you put it. And what's interesting is, we're not talking about it. We're not hyper aware of it. We're kind of shoving it under, right? But at the same time, we can't expect the world to accommodate us all the time. We can't always control everything around the cycle. We can do our best, right? But this going back to my prior question of so what can we do if we don't have the quote unquote luxury of arranging our entire calendar, our entire life around it?
Of course, right? And so on one hand, as entrepreneurs, we have more flexibility than most, but that doesn't mean that we have 100% control and flexibility over a calendar. So
Right.
what I would say is, going back to that awareness, it becomes a question of what self-care do I need, right? So for example, if say that the only date that you had available for us to do this interview was on my, last day of my luteal phase or first day of my menstrual cycle, that wouldn't have meant like, oh, well, I have to wait till next month then, right? I wouldn't have done that. I
Hmm.
would have said, what do I need before and after this interview to make sure that I am at the very best I can be during this time, right? How do
I
I
see.
take care of myself, right? And self-care becomes so, so important here. And I want to mention this statistic, which, blows my mind. Women in their childbearing years are twice as likely as men to experience an anxiety problem.
Interesting.
Twice as likely. Okay. And what that tells me, and obviously there can be many reasons for that, but what that tells me is that there's not awareness around the menstrual cycle and how it affects us and how it affects the way that we take care of ourselves, right? Because the way I take care of myself during my menstrual phase is very different to the way that I take care of myself during my follicular phase. I'm always taking care of myself, right? Self-care is a priority for me, but it doesn't take as much time, or it doesn't look the same way in different phases. So
Right.
it's understanding that, okay, as an entrepreneur, you get to be flexible. And I just want to give you this permission slip, because a lot of the times it isn't, oh, I don't have the flexibility, I just can't do that. At first, I want to challenge you. Can you do that, right? Can you have a little bit more flexibility with yourself and your calendar? Or if you're saying no, is it really because you don't have that flexibility? Or is it because you think this isn't a valid reason to have that flexibility? Okay.
So it's a priority thing. It might be a
It's
question of priority, or it sounds like, honestly, Melissa, it sounds like making the time to put in movement or to
Yeah.
meditate or to have any type of routine that's good for your wellness. It's how do I insert this type of habit and awareness in to make it more part of my consciousness, right? So it's
Yep.
adding more of that in. I would envision a solid first step for our listeners is maybe just putting on the calendar what phase you are currently in
Yep.
and adding that awareness into the actions and outcomes of the day and realizing this went rough today, and
Yeah.
then looking and kind of starting to align those things, right? Is that kind of a good first step, is just to create that awareness?
Yeah, of course. A great first step to create that awareness is to just start journaling, for example. If you a
Mm,
one word journal. So journal, if you track your cycle and then write down day one and then a word, right? A word of how you're feeling. Just ask your body what
oh,
the
I
word
love
is for
that.
today, right? And it might be a phrase, it might be a word, it might be even something that you need. It might be something that you feel, right? It might be space, it might be expansion, it might mean rest, right? And there's just having that awareness will help you plan your days better, right? It's not about making absolutely everything in sync with your phases. As you said, that's just not realistic. I don't do that. My clients don't do that. But how can you have, 20% more of cycle phase specific activities in each of your day, right? So for example, today,
Right.
if I'm planning my day, if I have a little bit of space in my calendar, or I have a block of time that's a priority for me, the activity that I do that's working on my business rather than working in my business, that's going to be phase specific, because I want to leverage the abilities that I have that come effortlessly to me during this particular phase, right?
Right.
And I just want to go back to the phases for a second, because I think I gave you superpowers for every phase, but the menstrual phase, and I think this is super important.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So during your menstrual phase, the communication between your left and right brain hemispheres is actually increased, right? So the way that you can look at situations and problems, you're accessing more parts of your brain than you normally would in any other phase. Okay. So this
Wow.
is a time, yeah, it's incredible. This is a time for reflection. It's a time to ask yourself questions and journal on it. It is not a time to take action on these things, right? Do not take action. Leave that for a couple of days. But write things down, like take time to journal, ask yourself what you're enjoying in your business, ask yourself what's working, look at your numbers, ask yourself what isn't working, look at your processes and your team members, just and rather than thinking your way through it, the way that you get your subconscious to do the work is just like literally free write on it, right? So this isn't like a math problem that you're tackling, that you're doing the math on. You're just letting it flow from you. You're letting your intuition, your subconscious do the work here, because your brain is accessing more parts of the brain at the same time. So it's an amazing time to reflect on things. You might make decisions during this phase, but it's not the time to like implement them or take action on them. Just write them down, right? They're likely just to be heartfelt, line in the sand, commitment sort of decisions, if that makes sense.
It does. And what's funny is if someone had asked me, especially before this interview, someone said, is the menstrual cycle a good time to make commitments? And I'm going to go, I'm going to assume no. But what you're saying makes sense, because it's the, you know what I picture, especially as a business owner, you just mentioned that the phase heading into the menstrual cycle was really a time to build systems, and it's almost like the building of the systems to automate. Why? Because then after that, you can take a step back, test them, examine what's working, right? So there is a logical sequence to
Yep.
this, in a sense, to say, build it, watch it, fix it, and enjoy it. It's kind of this kind of this our own cycle of pick a process every month or pick a thing every month, right? And you could actually go through, build the system to fix it, and then it's like, and then support the team. And it almost does support that exact cycle, which is very interesting, because there is a logical cycle and process to anything in business, which is, we ideate, implement, test, get feedback, and repeat. And isn't that interesting?
And it's the natural cycle, right? If you think about it, the way that crops are harvested, right? It's the same cycle.
Exactly.
It is just the same cycle in nature. And you get to use that. You get to use that in your business because you have it naturally, right? This is within you. This is a blueprint that is already within you. And cycle syncing is just about having that awareness so that you can implement it, so that you can get to know your own flavors of the phases and use it, right? You can also use it for things like content creation, right? If you think about content creation and batching,
very good,
you have in your spring, you start to do the brainstorming of what content, what's my strategy, what am I going to do, right? What different things am I going to talk about? Then you go into actually recording video for it, right? Then the luteal phase is fantastic for writing or even looking over things that you wrote in your follicular phase, right? It's another thing that you can do, right? If you're editing anything or if you're looking over anything for a second time, proofreading things, luteal phase is fantastic for this because of your attention to detail. And you're going to pick the exact word that you want, right? You're not just going to pick a word that kind of says what you want to mean. This is the time where you get to go into the details and edit things out and cross the T's and dot the I's. And your content creation gets to go in this cycle as well. So you can do your ideation, your reels recordings, your video recordings, your writing, your captions, batch all of these according to the phases that are best suited for them. And in your menstrual phase, you can literally, I personally uninstall social media during my menstrual phase. I take a break. I might look at my insights and then just uninstall the apps because I like to have that space, because that's the other thing. In order to have that clarity in your menstrual phase, you have to make space for it. You don't get to have that clarity if you're staying as busy as you normally are, because you won't give that space to your brain to actually have it, right? Because you're trying to do everything normally, which is what most women do, right? That's why most women have that experience of the menstrual phase being something negative, right? Because they're trying to do everything as they normally would. If they give themselves that space, that rest, then it becomes this beautiful, deeply feminine, incredibly clarifying, renewing, rebirth experience every single month.
Yeah. And when we say rest, because most entrepreneurs like me don't understand what that word means. but here's the thing. When we say rest, it doesn't mean do nothing. It doesn't mean, well, it could mean do nothing, whatever works for you, but it doesn't have to mean do nothing. And what you just mentioned too about uninstalling the apps, for example, what might be your version of resting from it, right? And what I'm thinking is, well, that's why it's so important to have your meetings with your social media team, if you have one, or outsource, and go through all that in the prior couple weeks so that you can step away. And there's nothing lost in that step away. Like, you don't have to go dark every 4 weeks. You don't have to disappear off the face of the earth. You can plan around having that rest, which I think is your point too, of knowing that's going to come and being fully ready to not lose any presence or not lose any momentum, even though you want to, prioritize what it is that you're strong at or what you're going through, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. You get to be present all of the time. It's not that I stop being present on social media. Of course, my team is
Right.
posting for me. Things are scheduled out. I probably approved them weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens with my clients as well. But you get to go offline for a couple of days, and you can allow yourself to do that. And this is what I'm saying. This is what I go back to when I was saying, like, this forces you to level up, right?
Right.
Because prioritizing your cycle is going to force you to, if you are posting yourself every day, and if you, even worse than that, if you're every day sit in front of your phone and asking yourself, what am I going to post today? Then obviously you're going to go dark for 4 days during your luteal phase or menstrual phase. It's going to be much harder for you to create from that space, right? So plan
Yeah.
ahead, batch, outsource, use a team, leverage the superpowers that you have, and then you get to go offline for a couple of days and rest your mind from social media, which in itself, right? We could talk about what social media does to our attention. Getting a couple of days rest every month is amazing, right? It can do wonders for your focus and for so many things. And it also gives you that space during your menstrual phase to have that clarity, to journal, to go for a walk in nature, to sit in the park, to maybe speak to a friend. Like you said, rest doesn't have to mean doing absolutely nothing and lying down all day. No, that's not what I'm suggesting at all. But do different things, rest from the things that you normally do, and allow that variety to give you clarity and to benefit your business as well.
Yeah, and the visual, Melissa, that comes into my mind. We talk about entrepreneurship all the time as a roller coaster of emotion, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm thriving, I'm living my best life. Oh my God, I'm broke.
Yep.
Oh yay, the launch worked. Oh my God, I have to spend on ads. Oh my God, like it's just this constant. Oh my God, I need help. Oh great, I found somebody. Oh no, I have to fire them. Oh great, like it's just a constant up and down in entrepreneurship. And you know what's interesting? The visual that popped into my head is turning that roller coaster into a merry-go-round. You know what's coming. It's very repetitive,
Mhm.
and not literally turning it into that 100%, but it's becoming more of the, maybe it's a tilt-a-whirl, but it's going around and going, I've been here before and I
Yeah.
know why I'm here and I know where I'm heading next. And that's
Mhm.
the idea, is being able to see what's coming and plan around it as much as possible. Because without that awareness, which is interesting, like I'm going through this myself in this interview going, oh my God, I don't think all that stuff was random. Like,
Yep.
I don't think those, decisions I made were random. I think that may have actually been a good or bad time to make a decision, or good or bad time to go execute or to do whatever it was, right? So I think it comes back to anchor to that essential point of awareness and knowing this is what I typically do here. The journaling is super helpful. I love the one word journal, because who can't commit to that, right? Just having one word to choose to say, how would I sum up the day, is insanely powerful when you look at the pattern. I think that's going to be super helpful for our listeners.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I actually made a journal which you can find on Amazon.
Amazing. I was going to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think I forgot to mention this to you before, but you it gives you, for, of course, a prompt for the one word, and then it gives you like a list of activities, foods, different things that are optimized for the phase, so that you can not so you can do them all in that day, but you can take two or three that you're going to incorporate into your day, so that your day is a little bit more phase specific, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can also just do this in your own journal of, like, every day, as you, if you have a normal journaling practice, at the top, not just the date, write down the day of the cycle you're on, and that one word of awareness that helps you build that muscle of understanding your body and your cycle. And you get to be so in tune with it, right? Because most of us are really out of tune with our bodies and our cycles. And as you do this, I think about 3 or 4 months going into this, you get to a point where you really feel your body, and you know what your body feels like in different phases, or even as you're transitioning
Right.
from one phase to another, right? Because some of the phases have obvious physiological cues, and others don't, right? Others are more feeling and more tracking, and different ways of understanding that.
So you mentioned the journal. So, and just finding out about that now, I'm going to grab myself a copy. I'm not kidding, guys. As soon as this is over, I'm probably going to grab that and actually start tracking it. But on top of that, what I'd like to do is if you're listening to this and you learned something in today's episode, you had an aha moment or an, oh my God, I didn't know that, share it on social media. Tag me at Shannon K. Weinstein. And Melissa, what's your handle on
It's
Instagram?
I am Melly Rodriguez.
Okay, perfect. We're going to make sure that's in the show notes. Tag us both with your takeaway from today's episode, and I'm going to send a listener a copy of that journal.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. What a great deal.
Yeah, I want you guys to share what you're learning in this episode and be able to support Melissa as well. I think that's such a great idea. This is something that we can easily commit to better understand. And there was one more thing too, Melissa, that we were talking about before we hit record really quickly. And I just want to bring this up because, first of all, I assume the most of the people who have listened to this and have made it this far in the episode are probably women. But I want to just kind of give the love to the men out there and talk about how they can then use this information to better understand maybe the women in their lives or not just their partner, but their team as well. So can you just kind of talk about how to leverage this information if you're not firsthand experiencing it?
Yeah, of course, right? So whether it is your partner, your team, whatever, this information is so useful. And just giving the woman in your life permission to be aware of this and to incorporate this and to talk to you about this, right? Creating that safe space for them to be able to come to you with this, right? Because it does affect her everyday experience, and it's something that we're taught not to talk about with men, right? And especially, for example, our partners, right? My husband knows where I am in my cycle, and he'll actually support me with it, right? I made a cheat sheet for him of like, this is what I like in, in different phases, right?
Family calendar.
Of course, like
Love
you get to set your man up to win here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also in your team, right? If you have women in your team and you want to offer them this option of becoming more aware of the different abilities that they have or the different abilities that are going to come more easily to them during different phases, you get to benefit from this too, right? Because the same task might take us 3 hours in one phase and half an hour in another phase, right? So if you have someone in your team that has a menstrual cycle, do you want them to have this awareness? Do you want them to take this into consideration when they're doing things for your business? It's going to be more cost effective for you. It's going to make them more productive. It's going to get you better results in your business if you have women with a menstrual cycle, right? So I have an all-female team in my marketing firm, and I want them to take this into consideration, and I want them to be open with us about this, right? And it's slightly different when you have an all-female team, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to incorporate this in a team with both men and women, right? It's just a normal part. Go back to the circadian rhythm example, right? If you have an employee that you know is a night owl, would you like to give them the flexibility, right? And you don't need them. It's not a customer facing role. Like, for example, let's say you have, I don't know, a programmer on your team and they work best at night. Why wouldn't you allow them to work at night, right? If that's going to have them yielding better results. It's the same thing, right? If you have women on your team and they have flexibility around the different tasks that they have, allow them to have this consideration as well.
I think that's such a great point. And for those who want to actually work with you to better understand their own awareness, their unique perspective on this, how can folks actually work with you?
Of course. So folks can work with me in two different capacities. And I love the intersection of these. So I have a membership for women who are learning about cycle syncing. We have a Telegram chat, a community where we come in every day and do our check-ins and do our shares and our intentions for each phase. And they also have access to an online platform where we're constantly adding resources where they can learn about different phases, learn about the female brain, learn about how to work out and how to exercise according to the phases, not just business, but also everything lifestyle. And I also have a marketing firm. So my team and I are a one-stop shop for marketing in terms of funnels, content creation, email marketing. And, I absolutely love when these two services intersect because, we have clients that we know where they are in their cycle. We know what they're doing for the marketing, and it allows us to plan launches around this. It allows us to know exactly when to contact them as well, right? I will take this into consideration of, hey, maybe this isn't the moment to ask this question. Let's wait a week, right? So if you are interested in either one of those services, then just let me know. I also have a free training up on my website that's 3 ways to grow your business with the help of your menstrual cycle. So that might be a good place to start if you are interested in either of these.
Amazing. And just finally, I know you have an event coming up. So can you just talk about that a little bit before we wrap things up?
Yeah, of course. So what I love about this retreat that I'm planning is that it's also the intersect of these two services, but kind of culminating in an amazing 4-day event in Colombia, right? So what we're doing is we're doing 4 photo shoots and video shoots around the different feminine archetypes, which coincidentally are the different feminine archetypes of the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So this experience is an opportunity to create content, to batch content for your business, for your personal brand, and at the same time, explore the different sides of yourself, some of which might be really comfortable for you, some of which you might have not explored before, in a setting that's all inclusive, that's in Cartagena, a beautiful historical town in the Caribbean. We're going to have a beach day. We're going to have pampering and fun and photo shoots. And it's just going to be such a fun and productive experience.
I love it. Okay. So how can people learn more? Just drop your Instagram handle or the best way to get in touch with you. We'll have it in the show notes too, but just mention it here on the show one more time.
Yeah, of course. Just message me on Instagram, send me a DM, maybe message the word retreat. I would like to offer a bonus. Anyone who is listening to this podcast, anyone that comes in from you, actually just mention Shannon, and I will add on a bonus of 1 month of free Reels editing and posting for you, right? Immediately
Wow.
following the
Amazing.
retreat. So that is a bonus for, anyone who comes to a retreat, mentions you, then yeah, they get a month of our marketing services following up from that. So we're going to have all this material, all these photos, all these videos, and we can turn them into content for your business. So that is a bonus if you're coming in from Shannon.
So many gifts for you guys. You have no
So
idea.
many.
This episode was just chock full of new gifts for you. So make sure you check that out. We'll have all the info in the show notes too. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did as well.
Thank you, Shannon, so much.
I can't believe how many episodes we've released of Keep What You Earn. There are literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in tax savings contained in our episode library. And there are so many topics that we cover. To make it easier to find more of what you need right now, we actually created a custom curated playlist just for you. That's right, a playlist of value-packed episodes that you're looking for based on your goals right now in your business. Whether you're making your first sale, trying to strategize your taxes, or you're scaling your team, there is something here for everyone. Check out the podcast playlist generator now using the link in the show notes and explore your custom playlist. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.